Hey everyone, Ronan here, and welcome back to the channel. We got a lot to cover in this massive part today, but before we get into that, Zach Jones, thank you very much for your support over on Patreon. And as always, please check out these analytics below and drop a like and a comment to help fuel the algorithm and help the video get to a larger audience. And if this is your first time here, please don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so that way you'll never miss another upload from the channel. And if you want to support us even further, consider becoming a patron or a YouTube channel member. You get exclusive access to content I don't post here on the main channel, as well as early access to all the content that I do. But with all that being said, let's get into what if Jessi and James challenge the Sinnoh League, Part 9. I hope you enjoy. We begin today's part with James, as he has spent the last week or so trekking through the wilds of the Sinnoh region. Unfortunately, the purple-haired man has been forced to come to a very real conclusion, that even though he was in hot pursuit of the people that he was sent to Sinnoh to find, and the ones that he thinks are in possession of both Jessi and Meowth, he's actually lost track of them, as he's just one man on foot. Even with the help of Rotom and Dust Noir, he hasn't really been able to make much progress, as the man has begun to run low on supplies, as he didn't really stock up when he was leaving Alamos Town. He just kind of left in a hurry as he was trying to get out of there in pursuit of these people that seemed to be in charge of who he's looking for, and also to get away from Jezebel, as she had managed to track him down. Not only that, but after everything that happened with the legendaries Palkia and Dialga, James is kind of wary of wanting to be anywhere near that place at this current time. However, all of these unfortunate turns of events have led the purple-haired man to one very real conclusion. He's lost and he has no idea where to go. He's so buried deep in the mountains of Sinnoh that he can't really get any reception from anything. This has led many nights to where James is sitting by a fire by himself with little to do, not really any food to eat, and keeping his Pokemon inside of their Pokeballs so that way they can conserve energy just in case he comes across any random or stray Pokemon that may try to attack him. And just as the sun sets on another frosty, cold Sinnoh night, James wonders if he's ever going to see civilization again. However, the purple-haired man is going to get a small stroke of light as over the horizon he sees a glow in the distance of the forest. This causes the man to begin to rush, although he really is trying not to get his hopes up, as he wants this to actually be something, but he doesn't want to set his expectations too high. Luckily for him though, he finds a small village that is come to be known as Sage Town, that's situated snug deep in the mountains of the Sinnoh region. The only people that really know about it are the population itself and people that go out of their way to learn about the town. However, this isn't going to be the only surprise that James gets, as he can see that there's only one real attraction in this place, and it's an actual contest hall. That means that at some point there's going to be a contest held here, which means there must be a Pokemon Center. This causes the man to begin to get excited as energy returns to him, with hope flowing through his veins. Now with a new sense of purpose and optimism, James takes off into the town trying to find any signs of a Pokemon Center, because he knows that when he finds it, there's going to be two things that he's going to be able to get: a hot meal and an even warmer bed, to which the purple-haired man immediately finds, as the Pokemon Center sits out like a sore thumb, as it and the contest hall are the two most modern buildings in this small village, as everything else seems to be at least 100+ years old. However, James doesn't care, as he immediately sets his sights on the Pokemon Center, dashing for the front door, barely giving it enough time to open as he slides in to be greeted by Nurse Joy and her Blissey. The purple-haired man spouts nonsense like he's been lost in the wilderness for years. However, Nurse Joy is able to make out some of it, as he's talking about how his Pokemon need to get checked up and he needs a bed and maybe some food before he collapses from pure fatigue, as all of the adrenaline that was pumping through his veins has finally wore off. Nurse Joy takes the Pokeballs from James, telling him that she'll give everything a checkup, while Blissey hoists the man over his shoulder and carries him off to a room to where he can get a nice hot bed and, more importantly, a shower, as he's beginning to stink. About an hour later, after James has had a chance to actually wash himself up and scarf down a decent meal for the first time in what seems like forever, the man's energy has started to return to him, prompting the undercover Rocket member to head out to the main lobby to find Nurse Joy so that way he can find out what's going on with his Pokemon. Luckily, it won't take him long, as Nurse Joy was actually on her way way heading to James, as she wanted to make sure that he was alright, considering that all of his Pokemon seemed to have passed their examinations with flying color. Though they were a little bit fatigued due to the lack of food, they were still in fairly good health, because James sacrificed his own well-being to make sure that they stayed in their Pokeballs to conserve energy. The purple-haired man is grateful to Nurse Joy, showing more affection for his Pokemon than she has ever seen. This brings an odd sense of enjoyment to the nurse, as she's never really seen someone fawn over their Pokemon like James does before. However, this is something that she finds very pleasant, as she tells the purple-haired man that they're all fine. James begins to thank the nurse, and then asks about the contest hall that is in the town, to which Nurse Joy states that even though you would think it would bring a lot of tourists because it is part of the Grand Festival, the fact of the matter is, unless you really know that it's here, nobody ever comes here, so we may only get a handful of participants at a time. This strikes James as odd, as he figured that there would be a lot more people that would know about this place. However, Nurse Joy states that she's glad that more people don't know about Sage Town. It really is a gem hidden away in the rough lands of Sinnoh, and she would prefer to keep it that way. Its small population gives it a really good sense of community, and that's something that's hard to find in the modern world. Even though Sinnoh is still wild compared to the rest of the world, fact of the matter is, it's catching up very fast. So places like this are fading from existence in the region with a quickness that can't really be combated, as more and more technology makes things more accessible. The fact of the matter is that most of the people here don't even know what a Pokédex is, as our population is a bit on the older side. However, they do get grandkids that do come and visit every now and then, but like it or not, they still prefer to do things the old way. Hard work is the name of the game, and that's what keeps Sage Town going. I'll keep it that way as long as I possibly can, the nurse says. Well, I don't have any interest in changing anything, James replies. He just says that he's interested in the contest. He's actually participating in the Grand Festival, and he didn't actually know this place even existed, or that there was a contest hall here. He spent the last week traveling around the wilds looking for somebody, only to lose track of them. However, considering he found the contest hall, it wasn't a complete total waste of time. So the man hopes that he can impress the judges enough to earn another ribbon here, as he feels like he's beginning to fall behind. Well, the next contest is in about 6 days, Nurse Joy says, so I'm expecting other people to be showing up within that time frame. Though I will warn you, we may not get a lot of contestants. The ones that do show up are very skilled, so if you have any ability to perform well in a contest, I suggest you make sure that your demonstrations are top notch, because we usually only get the best of the best, considering the only people that are willing to trek this far for a contest ribbon are the ones that actually know what they're doing. This causes the purple-haired man to gulp a bit as he heeds Nurse Joy's warning, thanking her for all she's done, from the input to looking after his Pokemon and the hot meal and warm bed. Joy simply chuckles a bit, stating that James's affinity for his Pokemon is all the payment she needs. She loves when she sees trainers and Pokemon bonding, and the fact that he has such a strong one with his is something that she will never forget. Never lose that affection you have for them, because it's going to be what allows you to set yourself apart from other trainers, Joy says, before turning and telling Blissey that they have other things to tend to, and walking off. This leaves James to contemplate his thoughts. While he did lose sight of that redhead, and luckily Jezebel, he did find this place, which means he needs to get to work. After a good night's sleep, he's going to get started first thing in the morning, as he knows that he can't rest on his laurels after his last performance in the contest in Jubilife City, and he needs to get on the roll if he hopes to have any chances of entering the Grand Festival. And also, the young man hopes with some of these other coordinators passing through, they might have some information on his friends. Maybe they had seen something the last time that they were around the area in Eterna City, or maybe they'd seen something since then, or maybe the people that he was chasing have been spotted in the area. Either way, James can do nothing but wait, as that's his best course of action for right now. So he begins to formulate a plan in hopes of coming up with a strategy that's going to allow him to secure his second ribbon of the Grand Festival in the Sinnoh region. However, as the man begins to contemplate his next strategy, from the shadows within the rafters of the Pokemon Center, a lone onlooker watches, curious about James and what he has planned for his time here in Sage Town. The next morning, after a good night's sleep, James is up bright and early, ready to start the day and formulate his plan of attack on how he's going to capture the ribbon of the Sage Town contest. However, the purple-haired man is going to be met with a scene that he wasn't really expecting, as the once quiet Pokemon Center has now been flooded with quite a few coordinators, as they have all made their way over the last couple of hours to the small, sleepy town. While James doesn't know most of these, there are two within the crowd that he can pick out right away, and he wants to do his best to avoid avoid them in Ursula and Rebecca. But unfortunately, the two girls spot the purple-haired man, wanting to do whatever they can to poke and prod and try to rustle his jimmies as much as possible. However, James is doing pretty good at not letting them get under his skin, as the purple-haired man states that he's only here for a contest ribbon and he doesn't really care what all they have to say. However, there is one thing that they keep revisiting, and that's his loss in Jubilife City. James was so bad that it spread throughout the entire Grand Festival circuit with a quickness that causes the purple-haired man to begin to blush a little bit out of embarrassment. That's something only an amateur would do, Rebecca says, to which Ursula quickly seconds, stating that the man has no business being in a contest, so they don't even know why he would be here in Sagetown in the first place. However, just as James is beginning to run out of reasons to defend himself and ways to fight off the annoying duo, there is going to be somebody that comes to his aid, as this young boy doesn't like watching people pick on other people. His name is Kenny, and he's another one of the contestants that's come here to Sagetown in an attempt to get their second ribbon as well. He tells the two girls that it's not very nice to pick on other people like that, and regardless on how good or bad they do in a competition, it still doesn't give them the right to try and tag team them and force them into a corner to mess with their confidence. Realizing that their advantage over James in the numbers game has quickly come to an end, the two back off, stating that James won't always have a friend there to help support him and get him out of tough situations, so he had better enjoy this small victory while he can, because on the contest battlefield, there's no way that he's going to be able to beat either one of them, as the last time they faced, it was a mere fluke that James was able to get past anyone. As the two girls walk off, Kenny states that he needs to just ignore them. He's seen people like that his entire life, and all he can say is the fact that they are trying so hard to pressure him into losing his confidence means that James must be a real talented coordinator. This is where the two become formally introduced, as Kenny states that he's here to win his second ribbon as well. He aims to enter the Grand Festival as he has dreams of becoming a top coordinator here in the Sinnoh region and in the rest of the world. James thanks the boy for coming to his aid, as he feels a little bit odd having a 10-year-old having to save him, considering he is nearly a full-grown adult. However, he keeps this thought to himself as he begins to engage in conversation with the boy. This is where James finds out that the Sagetown contest is actually a tag team style contest, which means that in both the demonstration round and the battle rounds, James is going to have to use two different Pokemon. So this turns on the heat for the aspiring coordinator, as he wasn't planning on having to use two Pokemon at once. This immediately gets him to stand at attention, telling Kenny that he appreciates all the information before he bolts out of the center, leaving the boy standing there looking a little bit puzzled about what just happened. All the while, the special onlooker that's still up in the rafters of the Pokemon Center decides that it's time for it to leave its perch because it wants to follow James to see what the man is up to. This is where we flash outside and we find James with all of his Pokemon out of their Pokeballs. The man now has a decision to make, and he can't quite put a finger on which ones he's going to use. But then, as he thinks long and hard about this entire situation, this is when a realization sets in. He's gonna have to use 4 different Pokemon in this competition, which means he needs the two best ones to complement each other. His first instinct is to want to pair Rotom with Dusknoir, as the two do share a ghost typing. However, he's not quite sure how that'll work out with Rotom's new form, as he hasn't really had any time to check it out. However, he does plan to do a little bit of training with the electric type as it jolts with some electricity, excited at the fact that it's going to get a chance to show James just what it can do. This leaves Breloom, Carnivine, and Zangoose, to which all of them seem like they're a bit of an odd pair. However, James is looking at them, realizing that there may be something he can actually use here, stating that it seems like Carnivine and Zangoose may be the perfect combination for a plan that he has cooked up in his head. It's here that he decides that he wants to try out a new strategy with them, so he tells them to take their positions, and he begins to give them orders. However, as the duo begin to execute the command, the same command is given again, but it sounds like it's off in the distance. However, the Pokemon are so focused on the task at hand that they don't realize that it's not actually James giving the command. And what's worse is the command is coming from a source that is mixing things up. It's calling for Carnivine to use an attack that it doesn't know, while ordering Zangoose to use an attack that it doesn't know, which completely confuses the duo, forcing them to crash into each other, leaving James standing there completely confuddled about the entire situation. The two stand up and look at each other, with Zangoose and Carnivine beginning to engage in a fight, as James does his best to separate the duo. They can't be doing something like this close to the contest, as they have to work on their new strategy. However, yet again, another another echo comes from beyond the trees, stating that Carnivine needs to use Slash while Zangoose uses Vine Whip. But once again, these are two moves that these Pokemon don't know. And since James is in the middle of their confrontation, this forces them both to stop as they look at each other, then their trainer in confusion. This gets James to stand up as he looks at Rotom and Dusknoir, seeing if it was either one of them, considering they're a ghost type, but nothing. Then, out of complete and total befuddlement, James looks at Breloom just to confirm that he's not crazy, but once again, the same command comes from within the trees. This causes James to approach one of the birches that is closest to them as he hears the command being called once again, but this time he can see the culprit as he looks up into a tree only to spot a small bird that seems to be perfect at replicating the voice of James. This is where he pulls out his Pokédex and learns that this is a Pokemon that's called Chatot. It's a Pokemon that's able to mimic human speech almost to a T, and this particular member of its species seems to be so good at it that it was even able to confuse James's Pokemon. This is where Chatot flies from its perch within the tree and lands on James's head, almost declaring that the purple-haired man's hair has become its nest as it snuggles in and begins to bark commands at all of James's Pokemon. They all begin to look back at the bird that has now claimed their trainer's head as its perch, completely confused and unsure about what to do. Well, all of them except for Zangoose, as it's a bit aggressive in this situation, declaring with a prejudice that it doesn't really like this bird, taking a swipe at it with its extended claws as it sits atop of James's head. However, James quickly puts an end to this, telling Zangoose to calm down, as Chatot didn't really even flinch at the swipe. It's still perched atop James's head, mimicking its voice, once again calling out attacks that none of his Pokemon even know. This is where James is joined by somebody that he wasn't really expecting. Sagetown's Nurse Joy. "Ah, I can see you've met our resident mischief maker in Chatot," she says, to which James immediately asks what she means by that. She states that Chatot's been in the Pokemon Center for a long time. It likes to sit up in the rafters and watch travelers as they come through, and sometimes it will approach some of them and begin to cause mischief, mimicking their voices when they try to command their Pokemon to do something. This causes confusion to break out among the ranks within the Pokemon Center, and it always ends up coming back to Chatot. But unfortunately, it doesn't really have a trainer. We don't know where it came from. It just showed up one day, and ever since then, it's been using its ability to mimic the voices of others to cause whatever mischief that it can for any passerbyers. This immediately gets James's attention. So you're saying that this Pokemon doesn't have an owner, to which Nurse Joy confirms. She feels kind of bad for Chatot, because she feels like if it had somebody that it could rely on, then maybe it wouldn't be such a pain to other people. However, it manages to irritate everybody so thoroughly that nobody takes any interest in it. This is where the purple-haired man's eyes begin to light up as he pulls a Pokeball that's empty from his belt and taps the bird on the head, to which it gives no resistance before being sucked inside of the Pokeball, and within 3 shakes, it confirms that Chatot is James's newest capture, much to the purple-haired man's surprise as well as Nurse Joy's. "Wait, are you actually okay with that?" the nurse asks, to which James confirms, "I'm trying to be the best coordinator I possibly can be, and having a Pokemon that can mimic the voices of others could be a useful trait in a coordinator battle. And seeing the type of confusion that this little guy can cause is something that has given me an idea for the contest later on this week." This causes Nurse Joy to smile as she tells the purple-haired man she knows Chatot is in the possession of the right trainer. After the way he reacted to his Pokemon being checked out and him getting him back, she knows that James is going to treat the bird right, even though it can be a bit on the mischievous side. James simply chuckles. "I've had other Pokemon like that before," thinking back to some of the previous ones that would try and eat him. Satisfied that Chatot has found a good home, Nurse Joy takes relief as the purple-haired man lets the bird out of the ball, only for Chatot to resume its perch on James's head. "Well, it seems like we got a lot of work to do, everybody, so let's get to it," to which the command is seconded by Chatot as all of James's other Pokemon roll their eyes, because now it's going to be in stereo that all of the commands are given out. This brings us to the day of the competition. While the competition itself is small, as the only people that have packed inside of the contest hall is just the residents of Sagetown themselves, the boy Kennedy is present, as well as Ursula, Rebecca, and James himself, as well as some other coordinators that James has seen competing in other contests that he has been in up until this point. While the first rounds are nothing to shake a stick at, the fact of the matter is there is a clear difference between between James, Kenny, Ursula, and Rebecca. They all demonstrate a mastery of their Pokemon, with James using a surprise combination of Dusknoir and Breloom, using their abilities to throw punches to wow the judges, as they are demonstrating a mastery of each one, and the fact that the two are able to play off of each other's execution of their attacks so well makes James one of the talks of the entire competition. But he's not going to be alone in this, as Kenny, Ursula, and Rebecca have all demonstrated that they have the ability to do this as well. But they all managed to get past the preliminary rounds and into the battle rounds. However, this is accompanied by smart remarks from both Rebecca and Ursula, as they tell James that his technique is still very sloppy and he should just give up now, before he has to face one of them inside of an actual battle. But unfortunately for the malevolent duo, they're going to get a rude awakening when the postings for the top 4 are shown, and it turns out that Ursula and Rebecca are going to have to face each other, while James and Kenny get the chance to face off against each other as well. This is going to cause the two to become rather quiet, considering that now they have to face each other in a battle, and they're both not exactly the most confident when it comes to facing each other as friends. However, James and Kenny, on the other hand, they seem to demonstrate a battle that each of them can enjoy, as Kenny uses 2 Pokemon that James hasn't really had a chance to encounter with, the mid-stage evolution known as Primplup and something known as a Buizel. They're both water types, and Kenny demonstrates a mastery at using both of them in this battle. However, James is going to be able to easily counter this with the combination of 2 Pokemon that he wasn't really expecting to use, in his Rotom fan form and his newest catch in Chatot. Rotom's new form proves to be the difference maker here, as it's able to easily confound both of the water types, preventing Kenny from doing any real damage to James. Then, to combine the fact that Chatot has a very unique ability that only it can use, it causes confusion between both of Kenny's Pokemon, and this forces them to become confused during the entire battle, which caused a massive decrease in the boys' points, allowing James to squeeze out a relatively easy victory. All the while, both Rebecca and Ursula are lamenting at the fact that they're going to have to battle each other. But unfortunately for them, there is going to have to be a winner, and Ursula ends up taking the prize here, showing that she does have just a little bit more skill than Rebecca in the department of tag battles, as both of her Pokemon that she chose to use, her twin Eevees, demonstrate the ability to play off of one another, kind of giving her an unfair advantage. But this leads us into the finals, to which James is able to take easy advantage of with Chatot, as it's picked up on one really annoying habit of Ursula's, and that's the fact that the way she calls her patterns. But unfortunately, as she calls out her attacks, Chatot's going to be able to run interference, as it does just as it did when James had caught it, where it perfectly mimics the voice of Ursula, allowing it to completely screw up her attempts to attack James by calling out the wrong attack for the wrong Eevees, even calling out attacks that they don't know, forcing them to stop dead in the middle of the battlefield and look at each other with confusion before looking back at their trainer. This allows James to go on the attack with his Rotom, and it's able to easily create a massive points difference between James and Ursula, giving him a very early lead. And unfortunately, with Chatot playing the backseat battler, this doesn't get any better for the redhead, as she's forced to take the L here, with James being able to secure his second ribbon in the Grand Festival of the Sinnoh region. This causes the purple-haired man to get a little bit excited. However, he feels like it was just a little bit too easy, and that whole strategy with Chatot doesn't seem like it'll be something that can work all the time, so he's going to have to reserve it for only the most dire of situations, though he is happy to have the bird on his team. After everything is said and done, and the contest has wrapped up, James is at the Pokemon Center preparing to part ways, saying goodbye to Nurse Joy and his newfound companion in Kenny. The young boy tells James that he's going to be sticking around. Sagetown is going to host a contest within the next 3 weeks, and he wants to take a chance to get some training in before he tries out again, so that way he can come up with a counter to that strategy that James used today, as it wasn't something that he'd ever seen used before. This just causes James to laugh as he tells Kenny that he appreciates all of the effort that he put in, and they did have a good battle, even though it was a bit one-sided. But next time, he'll try to make sure that it's a little bit more of a fair fight. However, Kenny's not sore about his loss, as he simply smiles and shakes James' hand before the purple-haired man parts way. However, this isn't where we're going to end things for James in this part, as we flash over to another part of the region, as a very particular redhead, Jezebel, has been hot on the tail tale of the other redhead that she assumes James has an affinity for. However, things are going to take a turn in a direction that nobody ever saw coming, as once Jezebel confronts the person that we now know as Marsh, she realizes that James isn't with them and he has no interest in her whatsoever as far as for marriage material, but he does have some sort of interest in her. So Jezebel declares that she will be joining this so-called Team Galactic until she can figure out where James is, because eventually he's gonna come to her. Now we swap over to Jessi, as she is still in Pastoria City about a day or so after her Pokemon battle with Crash Awake. While the redhead is reveling in the success in her 4th gym battle and being able to obtain the 4th badge of the Sinnoh region, the fact of the matter is she still has a very pressing matter that she has to deal with. However, Jessi is finding it hard for her to actually face the reality of the situation, as she sits in her room at the Pokemon Center staring at the Pokeball that Meowth is currently confined in as it sits on the bed directly in front of her, the same place it has been sitting for the last day. The inner turmoil that the redhead is going through in her mind is something that she's never really had to face, as she feels extremely guilty for putting Meowth inside of the Pokeball, considering it's something that the feline has always shown great distaste in. But on the other hand, there's also the fact that Meowth was hurt and they needed to get out of the Pokemon Center that was in Hearthome City, so it may have actually been a good thing that she put it inside of the Pokeball. Yeah, that's it. It was a good thing that I put him in the Pokeball, Jessi thinks to herself, and this is one of the many rationales she's been trying to tell herself over the last couple of days to justify the actions that she took. However, the fact of the matter is, she's not going to be able to put this off forever, and the longer she waits, the worse it's going to become. So unfortunately, she's just going to have to bite the bullet, as she decides that it's finally time to face the situation head on. So she pushes the button inside of the center of the ball as it expands, before the seal cracks, and from an intense light emerges the feline, as Meowth appears with no words, merely acting rabid as it tries to attack Jessi head on. The Scratch Cat has gone feral, as it aims to sink not only its claws, but its teeth into any part of Jessi that it can get its hands on. Jessi tries to talk Meowth down, but is immediately met with a hiss as the Scratch Cat prepares to strike her down with its most intense fury swipes that it can muster. It seems like its claws are growing longer and longer as its fury begins to build, and as this happens, it dawns on the redhead that this may not be a place that she wants to stick around in, as her in a confined room with a Pokemon that's furious isn't going to mix well for her overall. So she immediately makes a break for the door, barely managing to get it open before Meowth takes its first swipe at her as she runs through the doorway and heads for the main door of the Pokemon Center. This causes all kinds of confusion to break out, as the Nurse Joy and the Blissey of this center are looking on as a Meowth that is currently wrapped in a full body cast is chasing after her, trying to cause damage to her. This is immediate cause for concern, and Nurse Joy wants to put an end to it, so she picks up the phone to ring Officer Jenny. All the while, Jessi is able to make her way outside with Meowth in hot pursuit. The whole time, the redhead is screaming that she's sorry, she never meant to put it into a Pokeball, and it was a mistake from the beginning, but they had to get out of Hearthome. However, as Jessi continues to run outside of the door, she realizes it's no use, as Meowth is in such a feral state from being trapped inside of the Pokeball that it doesn't understand a word that she's saying. However, even though the Scratch Cat is seeing red, it does scream at Jessi that it understands her perfectly well. It just never thought that this trust that they shared would be betrayed like that. So what it's about to do to her is exactly what the redhead has coming. This causes the redhead to hightail it even more, as she knows that Meowth is serious. And while normally she would play the dominant personality here, the fact of the matter is, the look in Meowth's eyes kinda scares her, and she wants to give it a chance to calm down by exerting as much of its fury through running and chasing after her before she tries to talk some reason into it. But unfortunately, this is going to proceed for a bit as Jessi runs throughout the town, and she begins to realize that Meowth isn't wearing down. And what makes it worse is that she's beginning to hear sirens off in the distance, and Jessi quickly puts together that somebody at the Pokemon Center must have called Officer Jenny as a result of what had happened when Jessi gone running out. She tries to use this as a bargaining chip with Meowth, trying to point out that they could be in trouble deal if the police are going to be coming after them. However, the feline doesn't really care in this moment. Jessi betrayed their ultimate trust by capturing it inside of a Pokeball. The way Meowth sees it, she is public enemy number 1, and he aims to do something about this, even if the sirens are beginning to close in on them. Realizing she has no path to go but forward, Jessi puts everything she has into each step that she takes. But unfortunately, as she continues to run, she's going to run smack dab into what seems to be a brick wall. Well, what can be assumed is a brick wall, as it's built like one, because Jessi runs face first into this thing and falls on her butt, only to realize that Crasher Wake has stopped her dead in her tracks. Great, the redhead thinks to herself. Even more trouble. The last thing I need is him questioning what's going on. But it's too late. Meowth has finally caught up with Jessi and has begun to pounce on her. But luckily for her, Crasher is in the way, and he manages to catch the Scratch Cat by the hair on the back of its neck, preventing Meowth from causing any serious damage to Jessi. The Scratch Cat flails in the hand of the giant behemoth of a man, demanding to be let go. This catches the gym leader off guard, as he's never seen a talking Pokemon before. However, Meowth has completely thrown away any decorum of the situation as he demands to be let go. He's no one's pet or Pokemon. He's his own cat, and he aims to prove it right here as he slashes at the arm of Crasher Wake. While this does hurt and causes a little bit of blood to appear, Crasher still doesn't release his grip on the Scratch Cat, demanding that Meowth calm down. There is a bigger situation here at play than it even realizes, but unfortunately the Scratch Cat continues to flail, not listening to a word that Crasher Wake says. This, however, has gotten Jessi's attention as she asks what's going on. Crasher explains that there's been some shady people that have been spotted in Pastoria. That's what all the sirens are about, and Crasher had managed to track them here after following rumors of somebody wanting to plant a bomb somewhere in Pastoria City. This is where Jessi turns to finally realize where she's at. She's at the very border of Pastoria City to the north, a place known as the Great Marsh. Crasher states that the people he was tracking were said to have headed into the Great Marsh, and if they release some sort of bomb in there, then it could be catastrophic for the wildlife, and it's something that he won't allow to happen in his city. Now, you two could either be of help or you can be a hindrance, but either way, I'm not going to let you stand in the way of something that needs to be stopped. So, if you want to be let go, you furry little thing, then you had better calm down, Crasher says as he looks into the soul of Meowth. This immediately causes the Scratch Cat to subside its rage for the time being, as this bulking behemoth of a man kind of scares it. However, it still puts up the facade, demanding to be let go. He will bite his tongue for the time being. However, Meowth still gives Jessi a death glare, letting the redhead know that what they have going on between them isn't over. So she better be prepared to face the consequences and the Scratch Cat's claws after this is done. Now able to breathe a sigh of relief, Jessi gives Crasher kind of a thankful look for getting Meowth off of her back, but she fully admits that this is a problem that they have to deal with, and she tells Meowth that they will deal with their personal issues after this is taken care of, considering she doesn't want any real harm to come to this area. And besides, if this is attached to the assignment that they need to figure out, then this could be beneficial for both of them. However, Meowth can do nothing but just give her a very, very hateful glare, as the Scratch Cat can't let go of the fact that she had captured it into a Pokeball. Crasher yells at the two to table their issues for right now. They have a job that needs to be completed, so they need to get inside of the Great Marsh before any real damage is done to the entire area. Jessi and Meowth both follow the hulking man, as the Scratch Cat has now removed the bandages from himself as they head deep within the swamps of the Pastoria marshlands. However, this just causes one major issue that Jessi did not want to have to experience again, and that's the fact that they are now knee-deep in mud trying to trek through this area, looking for any signs of any human activity inside of the marshlands. But unfortunately, with how deep the mud is inside of this bog, it's going to be easier said than done, as Meowth, Jessi, and even Crasher are finding it hard to move around. There's got to be an easier way, Jessi yells at the top of her lungs, to which Crasher tells her to keep it down. They don't want to alert their prey that they're onto him, and he says there used to be, but unfortunately the train car that traveled in between the different areas of the preserve mysteriously stopped working over a week ago, and they haven't been able to get it back online. So unfortunately, the preserve has been closed. Realizing that if there is anybody here, they're going to quickly lose track of anywhere that they may have gone, Jessi decides to call on Yanmega, so that way they can get an aerial view, telling the bug to search out for anybody that may look suspicious. Well, anybody besides these these three, as if there's any humans here, she wants to know about it. Quickly, Yamega takes off, using its speed boost to increase its agility and scour the surrounding areas much farther than Jessi, Crasher, or Meowth ever would be able to do. However, this isn't going to come without any other cause, as Crasher suggests that even though Jessi has the aid of her bug, they will still need to split up. After all, there is a lot of ground to cover, and if there's one of them close to this particular individual that aims to cause any type of harm to the marshlands, then it'll be easier for them to actually do something about it, rather than just waiting for an answer to come and then struggling to try and stop it. Jessi looks back at Meowth, to which the Scratch Cat is glaring at her, almost to say that don't bother trying to run, because you won't be able to get away with me. However, Jessi simply sighs, telling Crasher that it's fine, they can split up, because she's at the point to where she doesn't want to have to look at Meowth anymore. She already feels bad enough for having to capture it, and she was trying to put off releasing it from the ball as much as possible. Crasher points Jessi in a direction and Meowth in their own direction, telling them to head there, and he will keep in contact with them. Once they've searched, they should meet back here within the next 10 minutes, or if they get any type of notification from Jessi's Yamega, then head in that direction. The big burly man then turns and treks off deep into the marsh, disappearing behind some trees, leaving Meowth and Jessi alone. While this could be a perfect time for the Scratch Cat to attack, Meowth decides that it's going to help in this task, as it realizes this could be tied to why they're in Sinnoh in the first place. So it will proceed with the orders that was given to it by Crasher, just for the time being. However, before Meowth turns to go, Jessi does something that the Scratch Cat wasn't expecting her to do. She takes the Pokeball and begins to crush it inside of her hand, and throws it at the feet of Meowth. I was never intending to capture you. I just needed to get us out of there. You can take the ball. I never wanted you as a Pokemon in the first place. Jessi then turns, leaving Meowth silent and stunned at the action, and more importantly, the hateful venom that she just spit at the Scratch Cat. This is where Meowth begins to yell at her. What do you mean you didn't want me as a Pokemon? Are you too good for Meowth? Is that what you're suggesting? However, Jessi simply ignores this, heading deep into the swamp and disappearing into the fog, leaving Meowth standing there, unsure of if he wants to follow her to continue to yell at her, or proceed with what Crasher had asked him to do. While this is happening, Yamega is zipping through as much of the preserve as it possibly can, trying to look for any signs, and eventually, the bug strikes some luck, as it finds footprints that it begins to immediately alert Jessi to, as she is currently the closest to it. So, the redhead takes off, trying to find Yamega in this deep fog. However, while she was the closest, that didn't prevent Crasher or Meowth from hearing the buzzing, so they decide to take off in that direction too, getting a signal that it is an alert for them to come as quickly as possible. However, no matter what happens, their efforts are going to be in vain, as when Jessi finally catches up to Yamega, she can see that it's been hurt badly, as her dragonfly lays in the mud of the swamp with a mysterious figure standing above her. Another redhead with some grunts that look like the ones that were inside of that base inside of Eterna City. Jessi instantly demands to know what they did to her Yamega. However, the trio say nothing, merely activating a device and then using some sort of technology to teleport away from the Great Swamp. Jessi immediately begins to panic, as she knows that she has to do something about this device, but she also needs to help Yamega. So she does the only thing she can do for the bug at this moment and recalls it, and then she heads over to the console, to which the machine is beginning to beep away. On its screen is a timer that is counting down. It is currently at 30 seconds. It's at this point that Jessi begins to do whatever she can to try and disarm this device, but unfortunately technology isn't exactly her strong suit. She lets out a growl of frustration as she wishes that Meowth was actually here, because it would be able to solve this problem. However, Jessi's wish may come true, as both Meowth and Crasher are within eye shot of the redhead, but unfortunately them trying to move through the marsh is proving rather difficult, especially Meowth with its short and stubby legs. This results in it having to catch a ride on Crasher's back, when the behemoth of a man is able to catch up to the Scratch Cat and begin to outpace it as far as moving through the swamp. But unfortunately, while they're trekking as fast as they can towards Jessi, the timer has continued to count down, and now it's within their last final 10 seconds. The redhead can do nothing but yell at them to stay away. She doesn't know what's going to happen, but she's going to try to disarm it. Suddenly, Jessi turns back to the console and begins pushing buttons, one after another, trying to stop the timer, frantically hoping that she can do something. But unfortunately, the timer begins its final 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, and then a giant screech echoes throughout the entire marshland as the machine activates and it begins to glow brightly with a heat and a light that can melt nearly anything to it. Jessi watches as she begins to think that her time has come, and then in a flash, the machine and Jessi are gone, but in its wake is a giant crater that seemingly did damage some of the marshlands, but not enough to cause any real environmental impact. However, before things fade, there is a brief swirl of dark energy, kind of like an attempt to open up a portal that Meowth and Crasher both watch, unsure of what to do. But this quickly fades as Crasher turns, unsure of what they should do next. But Meowth watches on, as even though he wanted to get even with Jessi for locking him inside of the Pokeball, he didn't want it to come at the cost of her life, and that's seemingly what happened here, as the Scratch Cat looks back at the portal that begins to flicker. However, it's here that something catches Meowth's eyes, as for a brief moment within the darkness of the portal, the Scratch Cat thinks he can see a pair of red eyes staring back at him before the energy dissipates once more. This just leaves the Scratch Cat in a state of stunned silence, as now, for the first time since he came to Sinnoh, Meowth is truly alone. Crasher looks at the Scratch Cat, telling it that it can come back to his gym for the time being, until they figure out what their next move is, as the gym leader has a lot of thinking to do and some calls to make. As those two turn to make the long trek out of the marshlands, we now transition over to a base that's situated deep within the mountains of the Sinnoh region, as that same redhead that Jessi had saw in the Great Marsh teleports in. This is where she walks into the main control room, to which the person that we know as Jupiter is now present, watching on a screen as the entire set of events begins to unfold, and their bomb goes off without a hitch, revealing that they had finally done it. They're on the right path of creating a portal to the next dimension. This is when we find out that this redhead is known as Jupiter. She tells Saturn that it feels like this test was a complete success. So are they ready to move on to phase 2? Saturn smiles as he turns to look at the two newest recruits to the Team Galactic Alliance, as from within the shadows step two very familiar faces that we know all too well. Butch and Cassidy, fully adorned in Team Galactic attire. It seems that technology that we stole from Team Rocket is exactly what you guys needed to get your machine up and running, Cassidy says. And this is where we're going to leave things for now. So tell me, how do you feel about this part? With everything that is happening with James and his ability to gain his second ribbon, and the reveal that Jezebel is currently bossing around Commander Marsh of Team Galactic, trying to use that redhead as bait to lure James in so that way she can finally lock her claws inside of the purple-haired man. Is this going to be the final nail in the coffin for James? What about Meowth and its hatred that it seemed to have built for Jessi? Now that it's gotten out of the Pokeball, it wants to take revenge, but at the same time, now that Jessi's gone, is it going to be able to get the chance? And how about the reveal that Butch and Cassidy were the ones responsible for the technology that went missing from Team Rocket, and they seem to have lent it to this Team Galactic for some sort of nefarious purposes that seem to have resulted in the complete and total annihilation of Jessi? And what about that portal itself? What Meowth saw inside of it, the glowing red eyes. Were they actually eyes, or were they something else? Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below.